Rising up, here we go. No time to be afraid. They say it's impossible. Can't listen to what they say. They got me motivated. Oh yeah, I'm motivated.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Maximize the Business of You. I'm Maximino, and today we are talking to Ray Flores. Ray has been a play-by-play man or a ring announcer for some of the largest mixed martial arts and boxing organizations in the world. Ray has worked with premier boxing champions, TGB Promotions, Mayweather Promotions, and has been featured either as a ringside announcer or boxing play-by-play announcer with networks such as Fox News, NBC, ESPN, Pay-Per-View, FS1 and Showtime Sports. Welcome, Ray. What's good?
How are you, my man? It's great to be with you today.
Oh, man. Thank you for being here, man. We met about, probably 5 years ago in 2015 through a mutual friend of ours, Chris Gilmore, on Showtime. But I was really interested in your story and how you got into the game. So can you give us a little backstory on your journey and what made you get into announcing and especially combat sports announcing?
I have the greatest job in the world. And by the way, I got much love for Chris Gilmore and his son, Christian Gilmore, as well, because they've done a lot for me over the course of my career. But I started off announcing when I was 17 years old, doing local public access TV in East Chicago, Indiana. And there was a fighter who was by the name of Miguel Torres. He became the WEC bantamweight champion of the world, but he was just starting to fight locally. And this is before MMA was regulated and sanctioned across all 50 states. So it was, self-regulation is what it was. It was before the boom of the UFC and before MMA became popular. I always loved boxing, but boxing was a little bit older. They had older announcers, older play-by-play guys, and I had to find a way to get in there. And this guy, Miguel Torres, was fighting around locally. We did an interview with him for a local community piece. And I asked him, I said, hey, can we start covering your local fights and doing play-by-play? He talked to the promoter, who was Monty Cox at the time, and he said, yeah, he goes, you can come in, you could film the entire show, you could show it a week later, you're publicizing your local hometown hero. So from there, we did that for a couple of years. I did that throughout, the end of high school, into college, went to Columbia College in Chicago, changed my life because I was always talking about the fight game. And they were like, how about you do an MMA boxing radio show? So in this business, Max, unless you're putting your life on the line, as you know, you never say no. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I started doing that for about a year. And then what happened is a local promoter by the name of Joe Goitia here in the Chicagoland area called me up and said, hey, do you want to be a ring announcer for my MMA promotion called the Total Fight Challenge? I, again, said, absolutely. My first fight, Max, I was terrible. I didn't know what my style was. I didn't know who I was. I wore an oversized tuxedo. Hammond Civic Center, this was probably 13, 14 years ago. From there, another guy brought me on by the name of Mike Davis. And then, over the course of my collegiate career, I was matchmaking as, for fights on the MMA scene locally. And then just kind of built from there, started working boxing for Bobby Hits Boxing here in the Chicagoland area. From there, met Artie Palulo, did some work for Golden Boy Promotions on their solo book sales series, filling in for Joe Martinez back in 2012 or, late 2011 into 2012. And then fortunate enough to get undercards for the Mayweather Canelo fight. And then I did about 4 or 5 Mayweather undercards. Then got with Artie Palulo Banner Promotions, did ESPN Friday Night Fights for a few years, and made my HBO debut in April of 2015. And then in December of 2014, I got on with Tom Brown of TGB Promotions, and Tom and his daughter Brittany changed my life because then they brought me on with TGB Promotions. PBC was born in March of 15. In June of 15, they brought me on to do press conference stuff. And then I connected with PBC and signed officially with them in July of 2015 doing other ESPN fights, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, what a great story, man. So you never went to school for any of this? You just kind of learned on the go?
Columbia College in Chicago, so I went there for 4 years, graduated with a bachelor in the arts in broadcast communications, and that's where I did my MMA and boxing radio show. But a lot of my experience came from just going out and hustling and working with local promoters in the Chicagoland area, learning the ins and outs of the business, because I learned what it was to be a ring announcer. I did play-by-play work on Comcast Sports in Chicago when we first got on board. I learned how to make fights because I was a matchmaker for a few years for a local MMA promotion. So I also did PR work for a boxing promotion that no longer exists in Northwest Indiana. So the one thing about it, Max, and I think you're so much emblematic of it, is when you want to get into a business, you got to learn all aspects of it. So I learned the PR work. I learned being in front of the camera. I learned what it was to make the fights. I'm always asking questions. Whenever I go to talk to fighters, I talk to the trainers, the fighters, everybody involved, the strength and conditioning coach, because I want to learn and fully understand the sport and the business.
Awesome. Man, when I watched you a couple of times, like I think it was for maybe a PBC thing, and 1 minute you're on the headset announcing the fight, and then, all right, let's go to ringside announcer, and then you pick up the mic and you're the ringside announcer as well. That's pretty hard to do, man. When I see you do that, I'm like, damn, this is, because I don't see anybody really doing it like that, you know? It's like you're doing play-by-play announcing, and then you talk to the ringside, and it's the same guy, and you have to change up a little bit. How difficult? What's the hardest part about doing your job?
The whole thing is I'm big on preparation. You can never be too prepared. So the thing is, people look at what we do, and Max, you can attest to this, you know, with the rehearsals you guys do for Showtime Championship Boxing, is they only see the final product. They don't understand the hours that it takes, because people will ask me, they're like, you know, what do you do during the week? And it's like, well, during the week, that's my time to prepare. So I'm watching tape on fighters. I'm getting my bio sheets together. I'm trying to figure out what the narrative is for the fights. Ring announcing wise, the style and the cadence is so different. So I have my play-by-play mentality, and then I have my ring announcing mentality. But it is constant preparation. You think that when you see us on the air for 2 to 3 hours on a Saturday night or whenever the fights are, and you think, oh, well, you know, they just showed up, whatever. No, like every single show, I probably put in 15 to 20 hours, if not more, preparing for those 2 or 3 hours. I mean, it's no different than an NFL team. You know, you work hard all week long. You're in meetings, you're looking at your playbook, you're studying the opponent, you're understanding what you can do better. There's so much involved into what we do, because at this level, the audience demands the absolute best and paramount preparation. And that's the biggest thing with me, is prep. And thankfully, thanks to the entities I work with, I'm able to earn a living doing this, so I can put in that time. And I love it. It's a passion of mine. I wake up every single day, you know, thanking the man upstairs for what I have the opportunity to do every single week.
Awesome. And you know what? It shows. It shows that you're serious about your craft, and that you're thankful, which is important, you know? So you've been part of a lot of good events. What was the most memorable event, and why?
Memorable one was being a part of the Mayweather McGregor tour. We did 4 cities in 4 days in 4 different parts of the world, and it was unbelievable. I remember, God rest his soul, you know, former, you know, head at PBC, Skip Davis, who handled production. He passed away a few years ago. Skip did a lot for me, and I will forever be thankful to him. When there was talk about Mayweather McGregor happening, I told him, I said, hey, I'm like, if there's a press tour, I want to be able to get on. I want to contribute. So he ran it by the guys at Showtime, and Kelly Swanson, Brittany Goosen Brown. They went ahead and they were like, yeah, you know, we really want Ray. And then, you know, the heads at Showtime, they signed off on me as well. So I was very thankful to them. And we started off in LA. We did a Tuesday at Staples Center in LA, over 11,000 fans. Then we went to Toronto, 16,000 fans. Brooklyn, 13,000. London on a Friday, 11,500. And that was unbelievable. You know, Leonard Ellerby and the entire crew, they took care of me. And I was the in-arena announcer for all 4 stops. So before the guys came on the stage, you know, the fans were in the arena, and we were doing a whole show beforehand, showing highlights and pumping up the crowd, doing giveaways. I was doing interviews with people that were in attendance, fighters, trainers, celebrities that were there. And then in London, I actually hosted the entire press conference. In Toronto, I introduced them coming out. So it was unbelievable, man. That was without a doubt the most memorable event that I've ever been a part of. And it was like every single day was, you better bring it, because the crowds were loud, they were passionate, they were vocal. And man, it just, you know, that was such a memorable 4 days in my life and my career.
Yeah, man, you were part of boxing history, man. That was like the biggest combat sport event of all time so far, you know?
Listen, to have those personalities, Mayweather, McGregor, and people ask me, they go, you know, what was it like seeing them and being around them? I didn't really have direct conversation with them because these guys are in their own world and I have my own job to do. I let them go ahead and do their thing. But the one item that I will take away is that Floyd has, you know, the biggest pay-per-view star of all time. Conor McGregor, the biggest MMA star of all time. The work ethic that those guys had blew my mind. Floyd has been set for life 50 times over again. Conor's set for life 50 times over again. Those guys worked their tails off. They answered every question from the media. They came with it every single night when they didn't have to. The fight sold itself, but they went out just to go ahead and show everybody that, look, this is what the fans want. This is what they're clamoring for. We're going to go out and give them a show before we even step inside the ring and fight at the T-Mobile Arena. You know, so that was what really stood out to me in terms of what I took away from my relations with Mayweather and McGregor.
Awesome. So on fight night, what does Ray Flores' day look like? I know you talked about preparation, but on fight night, what's your mindset?
I'm big on schedule, Max. So I like to know when my call time is. I like to know, you know, what my itinerary looks like. So for me, if I have to be at the arena around 4 or 5 o'clock, you know, I like to wake up, you know, 8 or 9 o'clock. I'm not an early riser, like I'm not a 6 a.m., 7 a.m. guy, because I'm a night guy. So what I like to do is, and I spoke with several trainers and strength and conditioning coaches in terms of having your body peak. So I'm a night guy, so I like to go to sleep for 1 or 2 in the morning, even, you know, when I'm here at home in Chicago and there isn't a fight that week, because I like to wake up at 8 or 9 o'clock, so that then come 6, 7 o'clock, when we hit the air at 8 or 9, my body is ready to go. And I am in the best possible, you know, frame of mind, physically, mentally, spiritually, to do my job at the highest level. So I'll wake up 8 or 9 o'clock, get a cup of coffee, maybe do a light workout. You know, I like to do like a late lunch and stuff like that. And I'm overlooking my notes. I'm ironing my clothes again, just to make sure that they look on point and my style is correct. A few hours before, I'll jump in the shower, and then I'll go ahead and try to like relax my mind, listen to music, and then it's go time. Then it's time to put on the suit. Then it's time to get to the arena. And rehearsals are so important because I'm a big guy when it comes to a feel thing. So I like to be able to feel out the moment, and I like to figure out my timing, my pacing. I like to look at all the elements that I'm seeing beforehand graphically, if it matches up with what I'm doing. I like to talk to my producer, my director, to know that, okay, like I have an extra 5 seconds here. I'm a perfectionist, Max. So I like to make sure that everything is done at the highest level. I don't like to just go on the air and just wing it or whatever the case may be. That's not what I do. It's not what I'm all about. I came from the traditional way of broadcasting. You rehearse. You're not giving away what you're doing organically to your partners, but you got to go through it so you figure out the timing, the pacing, when the breaks are happening, when we're going to this element, when we're going to that element. And it helps me flush through some things so that then when that red light goes on for real, it is time to roll. One of my really good friends, Burt Watson, used to handle fighter relations with the UFC. And the one item that he said was he would always get the fighters ready and say, it's time to roll, baby, time to roll. Let's do this all night long. And that's my mentality a few moments before we go on the air. It's like time to roll, like here we go. Rehearsals are done, preparation's done. Now it's time to rock and roll. Here we go.
So you mentioned that you had a lot of people that had something to do with you getting opportunities. What was the best piece of advice that anyone gave you breaking into television?
Experience you get, the better it is. I mean, I see how busy you are, doing as many different items when it comes to behind the scenes, in front of the camera now, Max. And I see you hustling and working, and you're constantly doing something. The one item that my mentors told me is you have to gain the experience, because you can't read a textbook, you can't look at a piece of information, nothing can simulate real world experience. It's like a fighter. You need to get rounds in, those professional rounds, the rounds of sparring, the time in the gym. You cannot simulate that in any other walk of life. So I have, when I first graduated college, I would go over, I emailed 100 different promoters from all over the world, Max, and a few of them responded to me. One guy told me, he said, yeah, he goes, I like you. His name was Alan Orr, 10th Legion Championship Fighting. They were based in the UK. And he goes, I'll fly you out here. This was February, I forgot, like 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. So he goes, we'll pay you, a few $100s, whatever the case may be. I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. He's like, you got a passport? I'm like, no, but I'll get one. So I got a passport, because I wasn't traveling out of the country. I was a broke college kid, just graduated college from Columbia, and then got my passport, and then went over to the UK, and I was ring announcer or doing play-by-play work for their shows for, very little money. They paid me okay. It was enough so that I could break even. But I went to, Hull, England for the first time. So I flew into Manchester. They drove me 2.5 hours into Hull. From there, they started doing more shows. I went to London 5 or 6 times, went to Manchester. From there, another promoter called me up out of, Northern Ireland. He goes, do you want to come to Belfast? I went to Belfast twice. From there, another promoter called me up from Scotland. Hey, you want to come to Glasgow? I went to Glasgow, and it was just gaining that experience.
So you basically took advantage of that opportunity, and it opened up other opportunities. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into sports announcing? What would you tell them is one of the key things they have to do to get in?
Right now, we have such a wonderful world with, you have the Twitter age, you have social media doing what it's doing. You can go ahead and really make your own podcast. You can, put your stuff on YouTube. I really didn't have that luxury. Neither did you, Max, when we were growing up and coming up through the business. I'm 34 now, and it's just, over the past 10 years that social media has really exploded. So now you have, YouTube, now you have, Twitter, now you have Instagram. If you want to be a sports announcer, if you want to be a radio host, if you want to be a TV host, use your iPhone camera or your smartphone and just start doing it, because it's all about repetition. You have been in every situation imaginable, Max, myself as well. I mean, I've been involved in riots. I've been involved in mics cutting out. A lot of situations have happened to me, and I'm glad I've gone through those experiences because it taught me how to handle them. Nothing in our business, whether it be anything in television or entertainment, can come close to gaining real world experience. And what I will tell everyone is every single time you get on that microphone, even if you are putting it out there and maybe 10 people watch your video on YouTube, or 10,000 or 1 million or 10 million or 100 million, you have to act like it's the biggest thing that you are doing in your life. So for me, I'll give you a quick story. I went from doing Mayweather Canelo, doing the undercards before Showtime went live on pay-per-view. This was my first show at the MGM Grand. I mean, I remember I've been such a big boxing fan. Julio Cesar Chavez was my guy. I mean, the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. So I remember watching Julio Cesar Chavez open up the MGM Grand against, God rest his soul, the late great Frankie Randall in January of 1994. And I was a kid watching that at home on pay-per-view. I remember watching Mike Tyson fight Evander Holyfield 1 and 2 at home on pay-per-view. And then for me to step inside of the MGM Grand Garden Arena, even if it was off TV undercards, and there were only a few thousand people in the building, in the arena, to be able to step inside that ring in hallowed grounds meant the world to me. But the reason why I tell you that is I went ahead and did that at that high level. My energy level was through the roof. The following Friday, so this was on a Saturday, the following Friday, I had to do a Best Western Convention Center for an MMA promotion in the Chicagoland area, but my mentality was the exact same. No matter what it is that you are doing, no matter how big or how small you feel the opportunity is, you better act like it is the biggest thing that you are doing in your life, because you never know who's watching, who is listening, who's observing you. You have to be on your A game all the time. From the moment you leave your place till the time you come back, you've got to be at your best.
I love that, Ray, because people ask me, how do I get into TV? How do I do that? You got it there. You got it right there. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Just do it every day. If someone sees you, it could open up a door. So I love that advice. So you and your brother are in the industry, two Latino, Latinx. You guys remind me of Bruce Buffer and Michael Buffer. Was that on purpose? How did that happen? How did that happen?
Well, I appreciate it, Max. And you know what? My brother is, I'll be honest with you, he's 27 now. He's a lot better than what I was at my age. I mean, he's considerably better. The reason why I say that is because he's gained so much experience. We used to watch fights together, and we still watch fights together. But when we were as a teenager, and he was, him and I are 7 years apart. He's 7 years younger than me. But I would bring him around, and we would watch fights together. And we had a passion for the fight business. So when he was a freshman in college, and I was still doing fights locally, but I started gaining some national events. So working stuff for Golden Boy on Solo Boxeo, working Friday Night Fights on ESPN. I had a lot of local promoters that I would work for here in the Chicagoland area, because the Chicagoland area is where I got my start, and I started getting booked nationally. So come with me to these local events now that I'm here, that I'm still here, and start to do the undercards. So what I would do is I asked the promoters, I'm like, do you mind if my brother does the first few fights, doing my undercards? I go, it's not going to go ahead and cost you anything. I'll pay him out of what you give me. And they go, yeah, no problem. We absolutely know that, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd give my brother like $50 to $75 to do 3 or 4 fights so that he can come with me and learn and understand my pacing, my timing, how I talk to the fighters, how I talk to the promoter, how I talk to the sponsors, how to handle a live event. A club show is different than a TV show because you have to kill more time as the ring announcer. You got to do interviews. You just have to be more involved, engaging the crowd. So, not being funny. I don't believe in doing comedy, but you just have to be more, hands-on on the microphone, because you don't have that cue in your ear, and you're not laying out for TV and stuff. So he started doing that with me for about 6 months to a year. And then I started doing a lot more events, nationally. So then he kind of slid in there. Awesome. And at the age of 19 years old, took over the local promotions that I used to work for. And then it became the point, where I'm like, okay, so I was doing a lot of ring announcing for PBC. I've been able to transition over the past few years to doing more play-by-play work. So I'm like, hey, Miguel, why don't you go ahead and come in and start doing weigh-ins and start doing the off-TV undercards before we get to TV. And now he's doing Showtime Digital. He's done Showbox, thanks to Gordon Hall and everybody at Showtime. He's done Showbox a few times. He's done Showtime Digital. There have been several times where before we go live to you guys on Showtime Championship Boxing, I'm calling the fights on the digital side, and my brother's ring announcing on the digital side. So I'll throw it up to him and stuff. So
that's awesome.
Crazy.
That's awesome, man. I see big things for you guys, man.
Paying it forward, man, and making sure we take care of our own.
Absolutely, man. So COVID. So COVID has affected everything. How has it affected the sports announce industry and you personally?
All fights in a studio, depending on what the protocols are. But what it does is it puts us into these bubbles, as you know, Max, being in the Showtime bubble at Mohegan Sun. So we have to go into these bubbles. I get tested before I leave to head to any city. I get my results back. They're negative, knock on wood. Then I go ahead and I get to the city immediately. As soon as I get to the hotel, I get tested. I'm in quarantine for a day. Once the results come back negative, then I can go about my daily, everyday activities. But it's been unfortunate, Max, because we're not having fight fans at many events. And that sucks, I'll be honest with you, because fight fans are the lifeblood of combat sports. They're the reason why we're able to do what we do. But, you know, we're still able to have fights and events and put them on with social distancing and still watch the fighters perform at the highest level. My hat's off to the matchmakers and the promoters and the fighters for not missing a beat. I mean, we saw a hell of a fight with Stephen Fulton and Angelo Leo. I mean, they went to war against one another. I mean, my goodness, what a fight.
Yep.
So I give credit to the fighters for still going at it, but it has changed things because I love going to so many cities. I love going to New York. I love Barclays Center. The food there is unbelievable. The people there are great. I have so much good love and great vibes from Brooklyn. I like going to Dallas and checking out, you know, the restaurants out there and the energy from Dallas. There's so many cities all over America that I love going to that have incredible fight fans, and we can't go out and be visible anymore because of the situation, but hopefully we're getting past this.
So, what's the weirdest moment you ever had interviewing a fighter?
Situations where guys are like bleeding and they've gone ahead and they've bled on my suit, and that's okay. There was one time when I was in Scotland and I was calling fights, and I remember, and the one thing that I try to focus on is I try not to wear much, like if I'm calling a fight and I'm ringside, I don't wear white, like a white jacket, because when I was in Scotland and I was calling a fight, I had my suit. It was a black suit, thankfully, but I mean, it was a bloody night.
You called the bloody one, right?
I called the bloody one, and like 7 or 8 of the fights were bloody, and I had like blood on my jacket everywhere and stuff, and that was pretty crazy. I'm not a fan of getting DNA on my suit.
Well, I don't know if it's a good thing, but the good thing about that is that COVID has changed all that, and I don't think we're ever going back. So you'll have a shield in front of you from now on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was pretty crazy, man. I was like, oh man, what a night, huh?
Awesome. So man, thank you for being on Maximize. You are doing your thing, and I appreciate you for being here. Where can people find more info about you or follow you on your socials?
It was a pleasure, man. I love what you do. I think this is awesome to be able to educate people as to, what we're doing in the world of entertainment. But SBR Flores on Twitter, Instagram. Also, Max, this year I've been fortunate to dive into Big Ten Wrestling. I call Big Ten Wrestling on the Big Ten Network, and there's some phenomenal athletes there. I'm calling boxing, and looking to get into other things because I just love the world of entertainment and sports. So, as many opportunities as we can get and go after, by all means, the world is there for the taking. I'm trying to do exactly the same like you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you being here. Everybody, that's Ray Flores. Make sure you go follow him. And remember, always bet on yourself. This is Maximize, the business of you.